Okay, Boker Tov. We are going to, first of all, the class as always is dedicated to memory, Lilu Nishmat, Bigdar Chai Avram Ben Rachaleo Mer Tzvi. And in addition to that, I also like to dedicate it for the Refuah Shlema of the husband, a very close friend, lives in Mitzpeh Yericho. His name is Eviatar Menachem Ben Zahava. He should have Refuah Shlema along with all the Ptsuim, all the other injured Kochot HaBitachon. The reason I wanted to do this online today and not in person was that it's going to be a lot of text based or a lot of stuff I'll be reading that instead of just having people sit there without something in front of them, it's just easier to do it on the screen. So I'm going to put on the screen the next Mishnah we're going to do. Let me get it here. Okay, so this is who I said we're going to do it in his memory. I mean, God forbid, in his for his refuah shlema. Okay, the next Mishnah says as follows. So we're going to maybe get to 2 Mishnah today. Not sure. Depends how much we get done. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Havei shakud lilmod Torah. Person should be very diligent in learning Torah. V'da mashet tashiv apikoros. You also have to know what to answer in apikoros. I'm going to translate that as right now. I'm going to leave it untranslated. V'da lifnei mi ata omed, and know before. Sorry, lifnei mi ata amel. Know before whom you work or toil. You should be aware and understand that the owner of the business is going to be, or your employer is faithful, and he will pay you your rewards for your labor. Obviously, we're talking at the end about Hashem, but we have to go step by step here. So I highlighted 4 verbs. One is shakud, the word shkida. We're going to talk about that. One is tashiv. Lahashiv means to answer or respond. Amel is to work or toil, and pu'ula is labor, action. It has a whole bunch of meanings. A lot of verbs here. So first of all, let's understand what the word is. What does it mean to be shakud l'lmod Torah? If you'll note that for Ashkenazim, we know that the bracha that's made in the morning for learning Torah is la'asok b'divrei Torah, not lishkod l'lmod Torah. La'asok means to be involved in. So what's shakud l'lmod Torah? So it's the actual learning itself. It means spending time in front of something, sometimes breaking your head over it, but trying to learn and always trying to grow. That's what it means to be diligent. It also there's a word in Hebrew, shkida. Shkida means effort, to really put in the effort. You know, a person said, I don't learn Chumash, it's too hard. Well, nowadays, that's I'm sorry, unless you have a severe learning disability. I'm not saying it's a joke. I mean, honestly, severe learning disability that would prevent a person from being able to read or understand something. There's no excuse today. Absolutely zero excuse to not be able to learn. So, not putting in any effort whatsoever, it goes against this first statement in the Mishnah. We're going to come to the other verbs shortly, but just let's jump over to the word epikoros. What's it? It's pronounced very often. Epikoros, apikoros. It comes from the Greek Epicurus. He was a philosopher who basically espoused, and it's already found in the Gemara, the philosophy of eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Everything that was sensual, any pleasure a person could have in this world, that's what we should strive for, and nothing abstract. There's no concept of God. There's no concept. Everything is just do what makes you feel good. Over time, Chazal, the rabbis have added to that basic understanding. The idea is someone who's an apikoros is someone who is filled with chutzpah, person who's an azut metzach. That's like the world revolves around them, or they can say whatever they want. Although in the common understanding of the word, apikoros means someone who is pretty much shunned Torah, or someone who, even the more extreme, someone who derides and makes fun of Torah. If you remember, the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim talks about the topic of dealing with someone who is not open to hearing and not open to learning, and in some cases makes fun of Torah learning. So here we're talking about you have to understand what to respond to an apikoros. So I want to just mention briefly what this one is about. We're going to come back to the others as well, but this one I want to digress to first. Is understand or know, No. Masha tashiv apikoros. What are you supposed to respond to apikoros? Okay. So first of all, what does that mean? I want to read to show you. I think I have it here. They put it in a second. Yeah. Make it a little bigger. This is Rav Steinsaltz. He says like this. Avot Rabbi Natan. Remember, we talked about the Avot Rabbi Natan is the equivalent of Pirke Avot, but a much more expanded version. Nemar, it says, Sheve shekod l'lmod Torah, you should be diligent in learning Torah. Umashet tashuv l'apikoros, and you should know what to say to an apikoros, al divrei Torah shelo yastiru, regarding Torah that shouldn't be contradicted. What does that mean? V'nireh, shelefi zeh, according to this statement in the Mishnah, al hadam lahatmid b'limud Torah. So as he's saying that there's a connection between the two statements. Why do you have to be diligent in learning Torah? In order that you should be able, in order that you could respond to the claims of an apikoros, who rely on partial knowledge. Or these apikorosim, they say, hey, wait, makes no sense. Look at this pasuk here and look at this pasuk. Obviously, the Torah doesn't know what it's talking about because they contradict each other. And therefore, the Pirke Avot Mishne is telling us, Rabbi Lezer is telling us, you have to learn in order to also not just to yourself, but also to be able to respond. Rambam katav shekadei lahashiv apikoros min haumot yesh lelmod deotehem. This is a very radical idea at the time of the Rambam, that in order to understand how to respond to non-Jewish apikoros, a non-Jewish apikoros is just, again, an Epicurean lifestyle. And they just will also obviously not accept Torah, but also make fun of it. You have to learn their philosophy, he says. And also you have to know how to have a debate with them as well. For those who have explained that in order to respond to an apikoros, you have to understand Torah deeply. Ladat otam midiah to really have a complete knowledge. They know and you should not allow yourself to be satisfied with only partial knowledge, or just some quotes that you're able to pull out. So here it says also that it's not just to respond to the apikoros, but just also another version says just to what to respond, so that when you're being asked after 120 years in front of the Hashem's Beit Din, you'll know how to respond to Hashem and to the Beit Din. Okay, so what's going on here? So it almost sounds like the reason they learn Torah is in order to know what to respond to someone who doesn't like Torah or who makes fun of Torah. That's not the case, obviously. It's telling us two things in the beginning of this Mishnah. Actually, I want to keep the Mishnah on the front page here. Go back to the Mishnah. It's telling us two things. We have a responsibility to be diligent in Torah. Picking up a Chumash or a Gemara or a Mishnah or Biset Yesharim or any sefer, and just kind of like flipping the pages and standing up for a second to say, oh, I learned something today. That's not being diligent. Most people, unfortunately, will spend more time researching a car they want to buy, or researching a topic they're interested in purchasing an item, or checking about which movie they want to watch. And there's nothing wrong with watching movies. Then they will sometimes in learning Torah. So understanding by saying shakud l'lmod Torah, you're saying Torah has to be a priority. That alone is a standalone requirement. In addition to that, you'll see you have also v'dam mashet tashidat apikoros. You have an additional benefit that when you're challenged, you should know what to respond. And by the way, when you don't know what to respond, the answer is, I will have to check and get back to you. Because if you start to respond with foolishness, all you're doing is reinforcing to that individual that you don't know anything when it comes to that topic, or you're just as confused, or he'll say, yeah, see, they don't know what they're talking about. So it's very important to be on your game. Now, the truth of the matter is, this is just my own perspective, that the idea of masha tashiva pikoris depends on the kind of life you're leading will impact this or not. What do I mean by that? Let's say a person is living in Hutzlaritz and they're learning and they're living and they're working among non-Jews. So very often, I know I was not challenged. I was asked many, many times over the years when I was working in the non-Jewish world, hundreds of times, questions of this. Sometimes they were meant to just stop. They wanted to know. And sometimes they were like gotcha kind of questions. So someone who's in that kind of environment, someone it has to be on their game. Someone who's in an environment, whether here or there, when they're working with people or living among people who are not religious, and none of them not religious, they're maybe anti-religious, unfortunately, not yet religious. That and they come into contact with them, with their neighbors or their working partners or something else. Again, you have to be aware. Don't ever just start making up answers. It's important. And if you don't know, ask and get some information. Checking with Moreno Rabbeinu or Google and Chat GPT and get some answers. So it says da mashat tashiv, know what to respond. Doesn't say tashiva because respond. It says you have to know your stuff, which is also very important. Now, let's go back and just re-highlight the fact that there are 3 verbs. Let's take a tashiv out of the equation for right now. Let's actually just do this so it doesn't distract you. Okay, so we have shakud, amel, and pulatecha. Shkida or lishkod, amel, la'amol, and lif'ol, pula. I want to talk about just briefly what each of these verbs mean, not just the English. Amel, let's talk about that first, the middle one. It's more than liot shakud. It's more than being just diligent in Torah. It means now you've learned this item or these things, put it into practice. It says Adam la'amal yulad. A person was created or born to work, to toil. In other words, I can sit back. Let's say I wanted to be an accountant. I don't. Let's say I want to be an accountant. So I can sit and learn the accounting theory day in and day out, every single day until I know better than every accountant in the world. Great. It makes me an expert in the knowledge. But when I have to, do someone's taxes or be an accountant for a corporation, until I actually do it and put it into practice, it's only theory. The difference between that and Torah is at least when you're learning the Torah, you're getting mitzvot for learning. But then you get also, it says, lilmod ulelamed lishmor v'la'asot. You want to learn, you want to teach, you want to keep the mitzvot and do the mitzvot. They're not just, it's not, Torah is not just a mental exercise. In itself is valuable. Obviously, you know that. You learn it from Tanya, you learn it from Siyat Yesharim, learn it from most any book you're ever going to open. But also there's the aspect of doing, putting it into practice. That's Amel. Shaked, though, like I say, is even if you don't understand something, let's say I'm learning a Gemara. And I understand basically what they're saying, but it's not 100% clear. A lot of people tell you when they're learning Daf Yomi or other things that moves at a pretty good clip, that they're not necessarily able to collate in their head exactly what's being said. And still, keep going, because the shkida, the diligence of just trying and moving ahead, even if it's not completely understood, is good. Keep at it. There's a Yiddish word. There's no way to translate it to English. It's called the horva. Horva means, I think I'm pronouncing it the right way, means kind of like just hanging over that daf and keep going and keep going and keep going. It's also shkida. And the last one is pu'ula. What's a poel? Poel is a worker, right? Like you have it's described here as well in a sense. You're talking about an employer and a worker. It talks about not just the action you're doing, but it also then, the implication is that there is a relationship between you and the employer. If I say I am a teacher, it means I teach. If I say I teach at Amit Boys, it means I teach. I'm their worker. I'm a poel. I'm their oved, and they're my ma'avi. They're my employer. So there's a relationship between me and Amit. I don't have a relationship with Malei Torah for girls, other than my granddaughter goes there. I don't have a relationship with them. I don't teach for them. So there's no direct relationship. They teach Torah, I teach Torah. But the concept of being a poel already stresses the fact that you're a worker, that there's a relationship, and it gives you additional responsibilities. I'll give you an example. If I'm sitting at home and I am doing nothing other than sitting here reading a book, not a Jewish book, I'm reading a novel, nothing wrong with it. Or I'm watching Netflix, or I'm just sitting here writing a poem in English that's nothing to do with Torah. So, okay, I'm just at that moment, I'm not necessarily learning Torah. I'm doing something that is enjoyable to me, something I like to do, and all. It's recreational. I'm not stealing anyone's time. I'm just using my time maybe in a good way or not such a great way, maybe not the most effective way. But if I'm sitting at school in a classroom, I don't teach in a classroom, but if I sit in a classroom and I say, okay, guys, you just sit there and play on your phones, and I'm going to sit here and play and learn. I'm going to sit here and learn. Even if I'm going to sit there and learn Torah, I have stolen. And that Torah that I learned at that moment is a mitzvah haba b'avera. It's a mitzvah that comes through doing an avera. What's the avera? What's the sin? I've stolen from the school. I've stolen their time. When a person works for an employer, person works at an accounting firm, person works at a computer place, works in a store, if your employer is paying you to work, you're not allowed to not work. Everyone knows it's built in. You're going to have a coffee break, go to the bathroom, you're going to talk to people here and there, maybe even make a personal call. But there are people I used to work with many, many years ago in the business world, where then thankfully getting canned. But I mean, they would sit there for half an hour on private phone calls. That's a half hour they've stolen from their employer. Come back to this here. It says, V'ne'eman, look at the last line. We're going to spend more time on this Mishne, but right now it says, take a look at this. V'ne'eman ba'al malachtecha. You should understand that the owner of your business, God, is believed, is faithful. He's going to pay your wages for your labor. What's your labor? Your labor is doing Torah mitzvah, living as a ben Torah or bat Torah, doing what Hashem tells us to do. That's critical. It's a critical piece of what it is we need to do in this world. So kind of let's just take a step back, and I'm going to look at a page out of Me'an Lo'ez. I'm going to read, I'll have it on the screen. I'm going to talk about this Mishnah. This Mishnah is about responsibility. Mishnah is telling us a few things. Number one, we're not in this alone. On the one hand, we have our own responsibility, but we also have a general responsibility to represent Klal Yisrael. How do I know that? Because it says, Da mashet tashiva apikoros, know what to respond to apikoros. Because if I can't defend, so to speak, our knowledge, our religion, our God to somebody else, then it reflects on who we are. It doesn't mean every single person is going to be a gadol b'Torah, is going to understand, but they have to understand what they don't know. I had a teacher, I'm sure he wasn't the first person in history to say it, but he was well known for this. He had been in teaching in the yeshiva I went to for high school. He'd already been teaching in the yeshiva for 50 years when I started to learn in high school there. So the idea is that he would say, you have to know what you know and know what you don't know. And it's very important. The question came like, what about teachers who come late? That's a very big problem. It's a very big problem in many, many schools. Let's say class starts at 9, teacher wanders in at 9:08. They have stolen from the school. They've stolen time. They've stolen time from the student. I'm very makpid on time. I try never to waste someone else's time. If I'm supposed to be somewhere or start a class or something, it has to start on time. If it's not going to be, I let people know how, when I've gone through the tefillah class, my pet peeve of people consistently walking in late by X amount of minutes every single tefillah. So they're not stealing from anybody because they're responsible only to themselves. But that reflects in the third statement, this concept of a poel, that we are a poel. So we have in a sense stolen our time from God that God gave us to use the proper way. So we have multiple levels of relationship here with ourselves, with our people, with Hashem, in all these different things. I think it's also important to point out that this is a very encouraging statement or a series of statements, because it tells us that even if you don't fully understand what you're learning, even if some point you have absolutely no idea what you're learning or the teacher's saying, and it's just for some reason just going over your head, the person's trying to explain it, still doesn't sink in, You're still learning. You're still gaining, so to speak, credit for Torah. It's obviously better if you can try to figure it out, or someone can explain it better, but you are getting credit. And in the case of being shakud b'lmod Torah, let's say I'm trying to teach something and just doesn't sink in, and you ask me to explain it, and you don't get it still, go to somebody else. Get it, because not everyone can learn from somebody the same thing. I may explain it one way, and someone else will explain and go, oh, why didn't he just say it like that? And I've had that experience before, both ways. So that's what shakud b'lmod Torah is. We have to put in the effort. We can't just say, I'll just get by with a little bit. And we have to recognize we have a relationship with Hashem. Let's take a look at a page. Oops, it's not here. It's in a place. Just a second. With the Mayam Loes. Let me get that on the screen. I'll make it bigger. And I'll move it down so you can actually see it. And I'm going to minimize the people. There we go. Oh, I guess I have to make it a little smaller. Okay. I'm starting here. It says this is now the Mayam. I've quoted from him extensively over the last many months, but this time he had enough to say that I didn't want to quote. I want to just actually read what he has to say. Let me move this picture up here. Sorry. Okay. Milashon shkida. The word shakud comes to the word shkida, effort. Even though God had blessed you with certain levels of powers or of abilities, and you have an inclination, you're a person who can learn Torah, without putting in effort, you're not going to get to the true heights of Torah. Okay, what does that mean? Let's take a person, I know a couple people like this, who knowledge comes easy. I mean, one time they hear it, they're done. It's completely understood, and it's like, I wish I'd be like that. That'll be nice. So for that kind of person, they get the benefit of learning, but there's no shkida, there's no effort. So in order to raise the bar and to raise the level of sachar, we don't learn for reward, but that would happen. They'll raise everything, got to put in more effort. Va'od, and furthermore, because if an apikoros would say to you, what are you wasting your time? What do you have to gain by learning? You see a lot of poor nebuch Talmidei Chachamim, like what do they gain from their Torah? As opposed to people who are professors who are involved in worldly philosophy, look at their level in this world. They get all kind of benefit in this world. You have to understand how to respond to something like that. I give you a very common example. A guy is 19, 20 years old, and he says to his parents, I want to learn a few years in yeshiva. I want to go learn Nicola for a few years. Or a person says to his parents before their gap year in Israel, after my first year, I want to go and learn a second year. And the response is, no, got to go to university, you got to do this, you got to do that, because after all, you're not going to be making a living in Torah. You're going to be the doctor, you're going to be the professor, or something. And it gives this level of higher importance to the other thing than to Torah. You have to understand how to respond to that. By the way, that does make the parent not bikaros, chas v'shalom. You have to know how to respond to that bikaros. Because you then know before whom you are toiling. Now he's connecting all these different statements in the Mishnah. As he says further in the Mishnah, know before whom you toil. Since we are involved in proactively learning and working in Torah, that we were commanded by God. Our sachar, our reward is great. Even a human king. But a human king said to a person, do a certain action, and you will receive a certain reward. Of course, the human king is going to give the reward. How much more so? God. You also have to be able, he's telling us that this last statement in the Mishnah, that the owner of the business, i.e., God, is ne'eman, is faithful to pay reward. That's an additional thing that the Epicurus has to be told. You think I'm doing this for nothing? I know that I'm learning Torah, I'm living a life of Torah, and Hashem is going to reward me for that. V'ne'emar, furthermore, it says in Mishne, Intivakshena kakesav v'chamatmonim tichpesena, as tavin yirat Hashem. He gives a very interesting pasuk from Mishne, that if you'll seek it, i.e. Torah, out like silver, or something hidden, like you're looking for some hidden treasure, then you'll understand what yirat Hashem is. What does that mean? The Rashbi, the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, explained what does that mean. If you seek out Torah, like someone tells you, did you know that if you go down the Rehov HaGilgal and behind building X, all the way down the Vadi, someone buried something there 50 years ago that's got like gold coins. You're going to go searching for it. If you did that for Torah, in a kadosh baruch hu mekapech scharcha, God is not going to overlook your sachar. Of course, you're going to get rewarded, even for the effort to try to find a place to learn. Let's say I'm deciding to go to learn. I'm 20 years old. I'm looking for a place to go learn at a kollel for a while. Or I'm going to look for a shiur I want to go to twice a week. The time I spend seeking out, asking advice, looking, visiting to see if it's for me, that's involvement. That's l'chapes kematmonim. That's you're seeking it out like hidden treasure. Mashal adam im me'abed sela or tachshit yakar b'toch beito. See, he gives an example or a parable of a person who lost a coin or important piece, expensive piece of jewelry in his house. He's like hanerot. He doesn't have any mercy on the candles until he finds them, which means, talking in terms of candles, not flashlight, he'll use one candle after another as he goes seeking and looking for what he lost. Since Torah is both part of life in this world and the next world, how much more so one should seek it out. Rabbi Eliezer said, he said, no one ever got to the Beit Midrash before me, nor did I ever leave someone behind, meaning he was always the first in, last out. Like I said, as we've seen in the Gemara. One time, I woke up in the morning. He found people in the morning as he went out working in removing the garbage and getting rid of the straw from the street. And I said, it says, he quotes the pasuk in Mishne. He said, like, if a person, I'm not going to use the current political bend on this one, but if a person gets up to go to his job, he's a garbage collector. There's nothing wrong with that. We need them. Without them, we have problems. Person gets up early in the morning to do his rounds, to collect the garbage, to sweep the streets. If they get up early in the morning in order to do their job, how much more so we have to get up early in the morning to serve Hashem? Since that's the case, Ikdim gamota. And that's why he would get up always earlier before everybody else. Furthermore, we also have to feel the sweetness of Torah. Now, I'm surprised he doesn't quote here the bracha that is said, which we say, the second in Birchot Torah. What does it mean, v'harevna? It means that we should want it to be sweet. We should want to feel like it's a pain, it's a drudgery, it's so boring, right? You should feel that. He goes on with that paragraph. Let me go down to here. That the main thing when it comes to the benefit or the growth or the higher level of Torah is spending time. What does it mean, hatmada, or as it say in English, hasmada? It means not just opening once in a while a book. It means having a seder. A seder, which means an order, doesn't mean necessarily in the classic sense of you're sitting at a seder in a base medrash because you're in a yeshiva. It means you have a certain time of day that you have dedicated and you put into your schedule, I'm going to learn something. I go to shir. Some people go, if you go to my class, you know that Sunday night you may have something, Tuesday night you may have something, Thursday morning you have something. So that's fantastic. Some people say, yo, that's great. That's enough for me for the week. Others say, you know what? Every day I want to have something. Okay, I learn Parshat Shavua every morning at 9 o'clock. Putting in the time, making it a priority. Actually, I'm not going to share the whole thing. Let me see if I can just put it here for a second. Actually, putting it in part of your calendar. I'm just going to show it here because I don't want to go through the whole thing. But I just today I put into my calendar certain things. The blue says Birkat Moshe. I have dedicated. I have made the decision a while ago that while I'm more or less retired now, that 2 mornings a week I'm going to go to the yeshiva Birkat Moshe. I'm not saying this to say, "Whoa, look what I'm doing." I'm saying this because it's trying to put into practice what we're saying here. It's in my calendar that Sunday morning and Tuesday morning for at least a couple hours. I'm planning on going to Birkat Moshe. I'm getting myself a pre-assigned seat where to sit in the Beit Midrash because it has to be part of life. Now, it doesn't mean the person's going to lead this class and then set up 3 chavrutot a week. Be nice, but that's not what I'm going. That's not the goal here. The goal is to understand that just like you may put into your calendar, I have a doctor's appointment. I have to remember to get my teeth cleaned. I have to remember to go shopping at Rami Levy. In your calendar, if you actually have a calendar, you put it in writing, trust me, it makes a difference. Put it into writing. He says that hatmada also means the concept of chazara, which is not something I'm good at. It's going over your stuff. Very commonly in yeshivot, what you have a shiur. And so you learn Masachet Shabbat, you're on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, and you finish Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, side 1 of page 30. And the next day, when you go, instead of going to Lamed Amud Bet, the teacher reviews what you learn on Lamed. Okay, that's not my strong suit. I just kind of go back to the stuff in the next cycle. But going over the same stuff over and over has not been my strong suit ever. But that's what he says it's supposed to do. If you don't go over your stuff, he says you're comparable to a person who plants but never ends up harvesting. You have to go over Yordea and understand what are our requirements in learning Torah. That's where we're going to go now. Just take this off here and read. Question is, what exactly, what are our requirements? What's the halacha when it comes to learning Torah? Let me get down here. How much Torah must one learn? Who is required to learn until what age? And from what age must one be taught? So the middle one, I'm actually going to answer all these questions. And then we're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch says. Because this is, it's very nice to talk about theoretical. Very nice to talk about in theory that we want to have, we have to learn Torah, we have to be shakud, we have to poel, tachlis. What are we supposed to do? So how much Torah must one learn? It's endless. There's no upper limit. There's no such thing. There's no minimum. There's no maximum. I've told this story over before, which I'm not going to get into now, but there's no minimum. There's no maximum. Who is required to learn? Everybody. Until what age? Basically, until the day a person dies. And from what age must one be taught? We'll see the idea of teaching Torah Tziva Moshe to a child as soon as they can start to talk. Okay, but let's take a look now. Tachlis. Okay. Oops, went the wrong way. Chayav kol adam. Now it's going to talk about in terms of sons. We're going to see elsewhere also, and there's like so much Torah on this now, also about the requirement of women to learn Torah as well. And I've said there are women who learn Torah that have unbelievable minds. I can't even begin to list all the women who I've heard speak unbelievable stuff, give great shiurim, which is a phenomenon of the last maybe 30 years, not even, which is great. I hope it continues. You have a person has a requirement to teach their child Torah. Everyone has this requirement. And to also have students. Now, the students could be their kids, it could be other people, but it means you don't keep Torah to yourself. And there are 22 seifim, 22 paragraphs in the following. This is in the Shulchan Aruch. This is the title of, this is the, sorry, wrong. This is the title of this section. מצוות עשה על האיש ללמד את בנו תורה ולא לימדו אביו חייב ללמד לעצמו. A parent has a requirement, a chiyuv deoraita, to teach his child Torah, and if he didn't, the child cannot grow up to say, oh, well, my father didn't teach me, my mother didn't teach me, no one taught me, not my problem. No, you have a responsibility to teach yourself. You have to go out of your way and learn. And how do you do that? Not everyone can teach Torah. Not everyone can teach their child. No. You have a requirement to hire a teacher to teach your child. But if you have a friend who's got a child, and for whatever reason the parent's not the greatest ability to teach their own child, you don't have a requirement to go out of your way to hire a teacher for that child. When do you start teaching your child Torah? Answer, as soon as he starts to be able to talk, you teach him pasuk. We just read a couple weeks ago that Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Who pasuk harishon parshat Shema. You also teach the parshat Shema Yisrael Shema Shem Echad, and then chakach lamdo me'at. You learn to teach more, a little more. Ad keven shisha o keven shiva. Az malicho etzel melamdei tinokot, and then you take him to a teacher who teaches children. Now, here's a good example how things have changed. And first of all, if you go back in historical times, I think it was Rabban Gamliel, I might be wrong, but at the time of Rabban Gamliel, that he's the one who instituted the idea that there had to have a community, had to have an educational system. It could not be just on the parents. There had to be official, mandated within the community educational system. And at that time of history, children only went when they reached the age of about 6 or 7 years old. Now, nowadays, by the time a child is 6 or 7, they've been in Israel, I'll explain why I'm saying that, in school of some sort for years. When we were growing up, our first day of school was kindergarten, 5 years old. That's the first day we walked into school. Here, by the time they're not even a year old, they're in Ma'on, and then they're going to be in a Gan, and then in Gan again, and then Trom, and all this other, then the equivalent of kindergarten, then first grade. So by the time they walk into first grade, here, in Kita Aleph, they've had years of knowledge already, which is fantastic, which didn't yet happen, which wasn't going on yet at this time of history in the approximately 15th century. This make it easier to see. He says that you start bringing the kids to school to be taught when they are 5, completely 5, meaning they're getting into their 6th year. And earlier than that, you don't start bringing it to school. Okay, he's a weaker student or a child who's going to have trouble learning. Now, this doesn't reflect on the issues of that they didn't have back then. They had, but they didn't deal with the whole section of learning disabilities, all the different issues that may come up with ADD, ADHD, and all these things. Obviously, they existed when we were a kid. They were called hyperactive kids. No one knew for ADD, ADHD. No one ever heard of those things back then in normal, maybe outside the medical world. But now teachers are trained when it comes to teaching children who don't learn like everybody else. And even when you have a regular classroom, quote unquote, regular education, and you have kids with all different levels of knowledge and abilities to learn, and even if not one of them is a special ed student, there's this concept of called differential teaching, which is, again, that's not something I can do, which basically means you split the class up within the classroom. You give a task to group A that's faster, B and C. Each group gets a different task as you go through with each one as the teacher, and how you teach is different. That's part of what this is about also. Being a teacher is not about the teacher. Education is about the student. Just like a hospital is not about the doctors, and it's not about the nurses, it's not about the ER, it's about the patients. Education is about the students, not the teachers. So we have to always look at what's best for the client. And the client is the student, and the client is the patient in the hospital. And that's what he's saying here too. Hagab. Mikol makom, Miyad sheyeh ben gimel shanim shleimot. Once he reaches the age of 3, lamdim oto otiyot haTorah. Start teach Aleph Bet to 3-year-old. They actually tachlis probably even do it, not probably, do it early. Why? So you already be able to start learning to read. That doesn't mean in a Torah itself, but it means to learn Torah. Afilu tinok she'eno mevin likrot, even a child doesn't know how to read. Lo yisalkuhu misham eliyashev im ha'acherim ulai yavin. In other words, a child is at a point where doesn't really get it, right? You don't just throw him out of a class, right? He should sit there and try maybe other people from others. As he sit there, something will sink in. This is his approach, the Shulchan Aruch, of dealing with students who may not be at the same level. Obviously, things have evolved greatly over the last many centuries. I'm going to read this and I'll stop with this one. What happens if you have a choice? There's 2 teachers. One teaches a lot of material, but he's not the most exacting in his teaching. But he's not the best at explaining. He covers a ton of material, but maybe he doesn't get them to understand everything. That's one teacher. Another one doesn't learn as much with the kids, but he's good at explaining and it gets them to understand. Then I think the obvious answer is, you take the teacher who is more careful to make sure they understand. Let me take it off screen share and give you my thoughts on that, because I've been spending the last 25 plus years in education. I have a thought or two on that, but I'm not going to give you my whole Torah now. There are fantastic teachers out there, and there are terrible teachers. And there are many teachers right in the middle. The majority of teachers are probably right. But what separates them? First of all, if you don't like teaching, you shouldn't be a teacher. That's first of all. There's no question. Just doing it until you find another job, don't go into education. Sorry, stay home. But when it comes to the amount to teach and what to teach and how to teach, one of the things that I've been successful in with students, I don't mean my success, the student success, is working with schools that, let's say they have to have 12 math problems they're supposed to do for homework, that this child's going to do 6. That's all. Because it's not about doing 12 problems. It's about doing the math to learn how to do the exercises and to get that. So if they don't have the pressure of doing all 12, but I only have to do half of it, and they put the effort in, they put the time in, and they'll do that. The same thing is true. I had, there are yeshivot that have different approaches as well. There's Yeshivat Chofetz Chaim. The Yeshivat Chofetz Chaim, the joke tends to be, what page of Gemara are you going to learn this year? They basically learn very little as far as the amount of pages of Gemara, but they will go into every single word that was ever written about that page of Gemara and all the commentaries on it. For some people, that's what they love, and that's great. There's no chance I would stay one day in yeshiva like that. Others are very much about Bekius. Bekius means covering a lot of ground with a surface level of understanding. Just they want to learn and learn and learn and get as much knowledge into their brain as they can, and then they go back and understand more and deeper at a later date. It's the other extreme. And then there's somewhere in the middle. Ein Adam, a person does not merit learning Torah except b'makom shelibo chafetz bo. We're only in a place where a person's heart's really into it. Whereas I can be, pop me into Yeshivat Birkat Moshe, and that's my world. Love it. Pop me into the Yeshiva of Mir. I'm not going to not learn. It's not my world, right? They have different. 95% of what they learn in Mir and what they teach, the same exact life I have. Okay, we have a difference, obviously, in hashkafa, a difference in certain values, but gadol, Torah is Torah. So, but I wouldn't feel comfortable there per se, but I will feel very comfortable, Baruch Hashem, and I do it at Birkat Moshe. So where you learn and from whom you learn is just as important as what you're learning. Okay, like I say, this is a topic I can talk for another 2 hours. I'm sure it's not going to do. Bezrat Hashem will continue next week. In the meantime, good day to you all, and hope everyone stays healthy and things stay quiet.